This is exciting. I'm live. So, one of the things that I've been thinking about for a very long time is how to start capturing sociology in the wild. Because so many times when I'm teaching a class, I will look for real examples to kind of bring home to my students and also to myself, because sociology is a practice that we do every day. Um, to kind of use the learning lab of life to prove some of the concepts that we talk about in the classroom. And easily, some of the easiest places to practice some of the most difficult concepts when it comes to understanding things like the social construction of reality and how, especially for my money, gender, race, and class are actually created through social behavior, which is the social construction of reality. But sometimes those things are so normal to us that we have a hard time seeing them happen. So, you should know a couple things about me. First of all, I'm always a sociologist first. It's like my natural stance in life. So when I'm walking through life, I'm thinking about sociology 100% of the time. That was a match made in heaven. I am also a huge CrossFit enthusiast. I would love to call myself a CrossFitter. Um, we'll work on that. I try. But one of the things that's so compelling to me about CrossFit is the culture. It is, some people have actually called it a cult because it's so clear. The boundaries of this community are so clear. And as a culture, it's actually a great example of a subculture for sure, but even a culture unto itself, a fitness culture that exists. It's global. So, anyway, that's what you need to know before I start talking about this video. So, the key thing to know is that this weekend, really starting last Wednesday, running through Sunday, was the pivotal moment for all of us in the CrossFit community in a year. Our entire year revolves around the CrossFit Games. This is like the Super Bowl of CrossFit. So, and they make, CrossFit, the company, makes a huge deal of delineating the difference between the everyday CrossFitter experience, which is me walking into my local CrossFit gym, which is called a box. I should make a whole nother video about just the lingo that establishes the culture of CrossFit. I'll do that. But they make a big point of saying, the games are not indicative of the regular CrossFit experience if you're just me wandering into my local gym and taking a class. They want you to take classes 5 days a week, and I maybe have been able to make it 2 times a week at points. But anyway, the CrossFit Games are kind of what the elite athletes in the sport kind of center their whole training around. And it's this 5-day extravaganza of fitness. And it's amazing. As far as sporting events go, I'm a huge sports fan in all regards. It's rare for me to find a sport that I don't like. But the Olympics and the CrossFit Games are probably the two pinnacles of a year for me in the years where the Olympics are running. CrossFit, thankfully, is every year. So every August, the CrossFit community descends upon somewhere. For the past couple of years, it's been Madison, Wisconsin, and has a celebration of fitness. It has really gone throughout the years. You can go watch all the documentaries about it. Now it's in Madison, Wisconsin. And the elite athletes, there's a lot of different levels, and there's teams and the affiliate cup and whatever. All of that doesn't matter. What's important about this video that I'm going to show you today is that you have to know that there are two sides of the elite competition, men and women, right? We already know that those terms, men and women, are gendered terms, right? So we already kind of apply a normal frame. This is what all sports do. Typically, sports are split up into men's categories and women's categories. Nothing new there. But the nature of CrossFit, I think, makes it a tremendous platform to watch how gender is constructed in an everyday experience, because CrossFit athletes are incredibly well trained through a bunch of different modalities. So they're high endurance, high strength, high agility, high gymnastics. They really train to do any movement that comes up in any kind of highly varied workout to the best of their ability, which makes their physiques very muscly, big. There's a lot of talk of steroid use in CrossFit because on both the men's and the women's sides, they have muscles. These girls are large in physique, whether they are standard kind of normal in stature, right? I think the smallest athlete this year on the women's side was 5'2", and I think they range all the way up to, I think 5'10" might be the tallest elite athlete right now, but it could be taller. I think in the past there have been taller women. All of them, though, at this level, this is the elite level, like they would be going to the Olympics and other sports, and some of them do. You'll see they're extremely muscular. And because of this, what we have is a natural kind of conundrum for them, especially for the women, which I'm going to look at specifically today. The women have a conundrum because their physique is typically what we would describe as masculine. They are cut, they are jacked, they are yoked, as people talk about in like bodybuilding and strength. And at the same time, they are identifying as women, right? They're in the women's category. They're wearing women's clothing. And so there's a natural tension between these two things that we're going to see play out. So what I want to do is watch a replay, different parts of the women's event, one of the women's events, so that you can see both the physique and kind of how the entire field kind of looks. Some of them you look at and you're like, oh, they're like an everyday athlete. She's obviously in shape, but I saw her running down the street. And other women you'll see are noticeably kind of muscular, really, is what I'm trying to say. And so I'm kind of fascinated by how they individually work to also in some ways prove, which I feel like they prove that they're still women, that they still have feminine things about them. And remember, both of those things are socially constructed. So femininity is an idea of what a woman, characteristics that a woman has. And so they are constructing this in this event. So let's get the event rolling. And I will give you kind of a clue as to what's going on. So give me 2 seconds here. I closed exactly where I wanted to go. And I'll just kind of comment as we go. All right. You should be able to hear the commentators as well.
As we have the women starting at 160. Going all the way up to 260. Leverage your strength. There's going to be some certain technique these athletes are going to have to do, and there's going to be a lot of leverage from the hips to get it up. And as you said, Sean, no barbell, no problem. We are still testing strength.
Okay, so what they're actually doing here, you'll see it in just a second. The event itself is to pick up the sandbags, which are strongman this is a strongman event. So these are things that you would see in strongman competition. CrossFit has never used these implements in a games up to this point. And so that's what they're talking about. No barbell. CrossFitters typically do Olympic lifting with barbells. So in this CrossFit Games, they are being tested in this sandbag event to see if they can get these bags starting. I think they start the women at 160 and the final bag is this red one that's 260 pounds. The goal is to get the bag in increasing weight through rounds. You'll kind of see how it goes up from the floor to their shoulder. That's the goal. Whoever can lift the most wins, essentially.
Let's send it down to the competition floor. That's where we find Nikki Frazier.
Bags back in the warm-up area that they were able to test ahead of time. And from what I saw in testing, many of them were able to get the bags up onto their shoulder, but stabilizing there was the issue. That is the standard. The athletes will have to remove their hand from the sandbag once it's up onto the shoulder, balance there, and show control before the rep is called good by the judge. They won't be able to lick quickly and come back. That would be a no rep.
Thank you, Nikki. There's your overall leader. Tia Toomey.
Okay, so they're going to continue to talk about the people who are less than important, but you can already start to get a sense of what their physique is like. So they also, don't get me started on the colors of this, which makes it look like a paramilitary event. That's for another day. But you can kind of all see they look very, very, to me, normal girls who are athletes. What I want to start focusing in on are the ways that we're seeing their femininity play out. So you can see a lot of them have long hair. It's up. Not too many of them are wearing, they have clean faces, pretty much, not a ton of makeup. And you can kind of watch as this plays out.
You also signed for training, but like you said, beyond that,
right? I mean, we've seen 200 and 150 in competition. We're starting at 160. And Sean, when I'm looking at these.
Also in this video, when we're talking about establishing the idea of femininity, listen to the commentators as well. Note here that they have two men who are commentating on a fully women's field. What you should know is that since 2012, since the men's side of the game started, there's been a women's side. They've had about the same number of competitors roll through, and yet we don't have a female commentator, which I think is interesting.
Time to start practicing appropriate technique. Straddling the bag vertically, balance between your feet, hinging at the waist, sliding the hands underneath. Getting your feet underneath you, like your feet shouldn't be dancing all over the place throughout this movement. Lapping that bag into a deep squat, the knees together. That's a big thing too. We were so used to power cleans or sandbag over the shoulder where people touch each other with a wide stance. You actually know more.
The women are wearing weight belts to protect their midline in lifting. Typically Olympic lifters, power lifters, strongman competitors will all wear weight belts. So that's a normal thing in this community. But as they cycle through, we're not going to watch this entire event, but as they cycle through, we're going to get to Danielle Brandon, who are looking at with the pink hair. Look at how they individually are expressing their femininity in what you can already observe is a pretty masculine environment. So there's a lot of this feeling of like, garage gym, chalk. You've got this big sandbag that they're hefting onto their shoulders. This type of power tends to be ascribed as a masculine type of trait. Watch how they are counterbalancing that with things like the way they're wearing their hair, their tattoos. And what do you think about the style of their clothing? Notice the length of the shorts and the amount of skin that they're showing.
Good fight from Rebecca Fuselier to get through that. Just a taste of, I think, what the crowd reaction is going to be like as we move through this event.
And what we have set up is that all athletes will have a legit opportunity to take as much time as needed to get that back to the shoulder.
No problem for Carl Saunders there, second to the left. Al O'Brien has
The only time element for this is really on the tiebreaker. That'll be the separator if athletes get stuck at the same weight. But as far as this is concerned,
I do appreciate that they are calling them athletes. Listen for the way that the announcers may genderize them as well. Do they call them women? Do they call them girls? Do they call them athletes? In what ways are the male commentators responding to the gender performance that we're seeing, which is complicated because they are performing a gender that seems to be running. I mean, this is not typically an activity. We see a lot of very feminine. Think about, does Kim Kardashian do this type of activity?
move out the 170-pound bag. And also talking to Allison Scudds earlier, we were talking about on a barbell, you'd throw a couple fives on it. It's sometimes not that noticeable. But she said you really notice the jump in weight with a bag.
Well, they're going to hit a certain weight where the bag actually changes. They're going to use taller bags. You can even see it in the back. Look at the front row of bags versus the back row.
Right.
So
they are just changing out the equipment. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Actually, for a lot of this event, it's cycling through. They're eliminating people as they go. And so for the sake of repetition, now you can kind of see what they're doing. We're going to skip ahead to some of the later rounds where you can watch individuals themselves.
Place overall. About 40 points out. Actually,
One of the key things that I notice whenever I watch the CrossFit Games in the strength categories is the hair. Notice how many of them have long hair. Many of these women, because I'm obsessed with watching all of the documentary stuff, they have extensions. So this is not their own hair. They choose to have hair. This one that you're looking at on the left side is Brooke Wells. Her hair, when it's down, goes almost all the way to her waist. I often think like, man, they do so much working out. They probably take 3 showers a day from their workouts. I'm always shocked that I never really see short hair in these women's competitions. Oh, thanks, Judge. And in close-ups, look for jewelry as well. I love these like braided twisty things that they all do. That to me is also a gender performance. Here we have a woman that has fairly short hair. Also notable, she's the only, I believe, the only competitor on the women's side who identifies in any kind of way as Asian. I believe she is from China or possibly Korea, South Korea. So when it stops on Danielle Brandon with the pink hair, I want to have a look at that. Notice all those perfect little pineapple buns. They're all coiffed. I guess I should put some sound back on. You can watch this. These are for the people who are eliminated. They have to establish themselves in a tie break. And I wanted to stop here because Danielle Brandon. Oh, you can see this is the announcer right here. And she looks very similar, I think, to a lot of the competitors in her style as well.
There's Chuck Marswell. You saw him, the head judge. He's in a blue shirt in the back.
There's a lot on the line for this tiebreaker.
Again, they're in the Coliseum in Madison, Wisconsin. I think there's probably
It's big for Danielle Brandon.
30,000 people there for a women's event. It's almost unheard of. Ooh, there she is.
Danielle
Okay.
Brandon can move herself in the third if she has a good time.
I want to stop here. Danielle Brandon is one of the bad girls of CrossFit. She has kind of a reputation for being interesting. These are going to be my words, but she's known for being difficult, for being highly tempered, a rebel. She pushes people. All of these things have been said about her. I think and they spend a lot of time talking about her hair, the hair color that she's got in. It's always a different color. As someone who uses hair color in my own life, I'm fascinated by the fact that she's really the only one, except there's one other competitor who does the hair color as well. And they spend a lot of time talking about it. They won't tonight, but I wanted to mention that that's kind of her persona in this community.
Emma Lawson is already off the floor. She unofficially took 31st in this event.
And Brandon was 4 points clear of Haley Adams.
It doesn't.
Caroline
Okay.
Spencer is on
That's a good
the
shot.
floor next to Alex Kazan.
And she's staring at the podium. She's also staring at if she moves up into third. Next in line's Mal O'Brien.
Right. We can watch them all do this little piece as well.
You know what I like to do? I always like to know who's my first timers here at the game.
Oh, this is actually a really long break, so I'm going to forward ahead. I don't know what they're waiting for. They were checking.
Daughter, Barnhart.
Mal had it. She just fumbled the last bag a little bit. Carr over, but from there, Carr could basically just throw the bags.
So again, they're doing activity that we would typically attribute to activity for men, weightlifting, strength activities. We have a lot of culture that tells us this is not something that women should be doing. And so the challenge here is for these individuals to maintain for themselves, if they want to, a sense of femininity. I think you can see that as they go through this, not in the activity that they're doing, but in the expression of who they are. How do we know that they are women in this competition when look at their muscle mass? I mean, these are muscly ladies. And they probably wouldn't like me calling them ladies, honestly. Another great place to look, and I don't know if it's on any of these competitors, notice along with cosmetics like face, notice fingernails. I'm fascinated by their fingernails, and we see this happen with fingernails in other disciplines, other athletic events that require a huge amount of athleticism. Think about Florence Griffith Joyner, the sprinter. Ooh, I wanna.
I just thought there would be more room to pick up the 150.
That's totally fair.
Danielle
What was this
Brandon
experience
talking.
like for you? This is something brand new we've never seen before at the CrossFit Games.
It's really cool just because we usually mess a lot around with the 150. And I remember last time I touched a 200, so it's pretty cool to be able to do it kind of with no training on it, you know?
Thank you.
I think she's such a fascinating character. She is really interesting. I should note here that this is an international field of competitors. So we have Americans. There's Emma McQuaid, who just walked, is from Ireland. There are quite a few from Australia, quite a few from Iceland and Europe, and a lot of Americans. Some from, I don't know if there's any women from South America or Mexico. There are both of those categories on the men's side. So just so that you can see, they've been cutting women as they go through. Part of the reason, and I am going to fast forward. So in CrossFit, the leader wears the white jersey. And we're getting to really heavy bags now. Have a look at this woman on the left. Her name's Danielle Brandon. I'm laughing because she's just so good at this. It's insane. She, to me, is the pinnacle of gender expression for women in CrossFit. She is probably capable of lifting the heaviest weight on the women's side. So to me, as we get into these heavier categories, you start to see a winnowing down of the field who has to, or feels like, in my interpretation, feels like they have to really double down on their femininity. Tia Claire Toomey, who is the one who's currently struggling with this 220 in the white and red, she is going to be a 6-time winner of this event. No matter what happens here in this event, she's going to win this whole weekend. She's that far ahead. She is also an incredible weightlifter, an incredible all-around athlete. Look at her gender expression. And sometimes it's stuff that they don't necessarily choose to do. But a lot of times when we talk about traditional beauty standards, how much do they apply to some of the women that we are talking about? In Tia's case, I noticed that she has a very symmetrical looking face with her eyes set very close in. That is traditionally, that's one of the models for how they determine what Disney princesses look like. It's kind of those facial features that are traditionally feminine. So there are parts of this idea that we would apply to her. She doesn't have to work so hard because she has this cute little face, honestly. And yet she is one of the biggest beasts in this entire field. I mean, to say that is probably unfair in this context because she is so good at this. That's another thing to consider in talking about gender expression is how people watching this event will help to create gender expression as well. So even if the women themselves are not expressing gender in a particular way, what are we doing as people watching this to apply this to them? So looking at Tia with her, curly hair that's put up, with her facial structure, she doesn't have to work so hard to tell us that she's a woman, even though she is by far the best athlete, probably in this entire competition, including the men's side. We already kind of apply basic norms of what femininity is to what she looks like. She doesn't have to work so hard to tell us that. She doesn't look like she's not a woman, even though she is jacked. Whereas someone like Segura daughter, look at the size of her traps, right? The muscles right by her neck. That is not typically a feminine kind of trait, right? Physical characteristic. So she may have to work harder to apply femininity, right? We look at her and we're like, whoa, she is super muscly, and she stands out that way. Whereas Tia doesn't have that pronounced musculature right there. She doesn't have to work so hard. Is it fair? No. Is that gender, the social construction of gender? Yes, it is. I also think it's very interesting how many women choose to wear braids. Braids typically are associated with little girls. Now, of course, this is a timing and a trend thing. The trend for women to wear longer hair later in life and to braid it could be really super practical, especially for these women. But at the same time, it makes them look young, and they have this kind of like, I don't know how to say it, except that Every time I see Ellie Turner, who we just saw a minute ago with the long blonde braid, I think of Tangled, the story of Rapunzel. So could that be just me? Sure. Are there men in this Coliseum watching this event and assessing which girl is hotter than the next? Yes, I can guarantee you there are. Just watch the Savon podcast.
Now we're up to 230 pounds. Here's Jacqueline Dahl.
So now we're getting to, this is extremely heavy weight. This girl right here is lifting 100 pounds over her own body weight. So we are now getting to the really strong women. Have a look at how their physiques may challenge traditional ideas of what femininity is.
And Jacqueline Dahlstrom has it.
This is Amanda Barnhart that's coming up. She is a former swimmer. She's probably one of the tallest athletes in the field. She's a great one to look at in terms of gender expression.
The second rinse and repeat. The best finish of the weekend so far. Barnhart is through.
Oh, Brooke Wells is another good one to watch for this.
I can't imagine what's going through her head right now, being out there all by herself on the platform.
But the crazy thing is, Sean, she's in the exact same spot at which we saw her a year ago. And now she's out there just fighting the weight.
It's heavy.
And a lot of times
See the
when you come
braids?
back from a major injury like that, a traumatic injury like that, the question is, will I ever get to do this again? Well, here you are. Will I ever get the same again? And that's always tough.
And she's going to bow out. To me, one of the most interesting pieces of CrossFit is the normal way for women to dress. What you're looking at here is very normal for women in terms of how they dress. And the booty short is like the short of women's CrossFit. What I think is very interesting about that is that just the choice of that style of short already does a lot of work in creating the idea of women in CrossFit and what is considered feminine in CrossFit. These girls basically work out in bikinis. We also see this in sports like physique and bodybuilding, but the purpose for the dress in those is to highlight the physique that they're working on. It's to highlight the body. My question is always, why do CrossFitters have to wear no clothes when it's about performance? This girl's another great example of looking for, look at the size of her. Look at the size of her neck. Look at the size of her middle. She is absolutely ripped as an athlete. This is Danielle Brandon. Please pay attention to her. How do these women who are lifting what for an everyday, regular Joe man would be impossible to pick this up? How are they counterbalancing the perception of that kind of strength with also the challenge of being a woman in this time and place? So Danielle Brandon, we're going to spend some time on because she, to me, is the most interesting of all of them. Keep in mind, she is the heaviest. She has the potential for lifting the heaviest weights in this entire field. She should just do strongman. She's amazing. Now we're gonna see these women cycle through here. I do want to fast forward just to get us to the final.
After this event,
Is your back tired watching this?
Yes.
My back is so tired watching this. How do they do it?
And how many of you watching this, including myself, are thinking about this girl who is heaving this bag off the ground that's 240 pounds? Look at her go. A huge show of athleticism. How many of you are like, what is up with her roots? If you're a woman, you know. Or if you bleach your hair. that is another sign of gender expression, right? The expectation that even though she's doing something that literally is not a human trait. I mean, she's superhuman in her ability to lift weights. My first question is, I wonder if she just hasn't had time to bleach her hair, or that's definitely a gender expectation. All right, now, when they go to close up of Danny Spiegel, have a look at her makeup. Let's see. They should show her close up.
Now we're going to go up to 250. But first, we got to sort out the tie break between Mikulich.
Oh, yes. Okay, we're going to fast forward through the tie break. We don't need to watch that.
A packed sandbag
all right.
at 250.
So Jackie Dahlstrom, I believe, is
second to last bag. There's only one left after this.
I don't remember where she is from in the world. Norway.
250 pounds first attempt. Jacqueline Dahlstrom.
This is 100 pounds more than she weighs.
I
And
mean,
see that deep squat bend position?
How can you smile with that thing on you like that?
So she's squeezing her knees together, bringing her feet together.
you just kind of want to watch it to see if she's going to do it. I don't have anything to report right at this second, but amazing. Okay. All right, we're gonna go to, okay, now. Okay, I'm gonna stop this. Have a look at Danny Spiegel's presentation of herself. So we have a sports bra. She's not wearing a shirt. She's got a large, like, floral tattoo that runs onto her back as well. She's got waxed eyebrows or some kind of like sculpted eyebrows. She is wearing, I believe, some makeup on her face. And look at the eyelashes. The eyelashes for me are the most fantastic thing. Also look at the fingernails here. And then as she's walking away, have a look at her general physique. I think I could probably do a whole video just on this and her presentation of herself in CrossFit, because it is, she to me represents the contradiction of a female CrossFitter, someone who trains like a man in all of these strength, typical strength activities. She is super strong, which we attribute as a characteristic to men, but look at how she presents herself and convinces us that she is a woman doing this. On the flip side of this, I will talk about this, the social construction of how we get to the opposite side of that coin, which is, are they rewriting the expectations for women because they're doing this activity? I don't want to lose that. For now, watch her go.
Danny Spiegel for the win. Danny Spiegel takes the Sandbag Ladder.
Just amazing.
Fill it up again.
Just amazing. Okay. There's a little bit more that we could look at in terms of her interview at the end. She doesn't say much, and I don't think much is given to us in terms of her expression, so we don't really have to worry about that anymore. But one of the things I do want to say, you can go through any of the CrossFit stuff. I have been, in fact, part of my challenge going forward is to try to make a much more comprehensive review of this type of thing and break down the categories of gender expression, how I think women in CrossFit really toe the line between a tremendous strength athlete, and we're basically talking about decathlon level training, but across strength and endurance. I mean, these truly are, their training makes them like machines. And so I think they do a lot of work to make themselves and others convinced of the fact that they are not men, they are women doing the sport. So the question comes for us then, how much are they rewriting what our expectations are for women? Do we have to be saying anymore, women don't typically do this, they do other gentler things, we let the men lift the weights? I will say CrossFit is an anomaly. That's why I think this community is so popular. One of the reasons, especially among women, is because for women who do like athletic pursuits, who do want to lift heavy, this is the place to go and be accepted doing that. And there's a broad range of female roles being honored here. So women who are single and married go to CrossFit. Women who are mothers and who are not mothers do CrossFit. Women who, of all shapes and sizes do CrossFit. And there seems to be a universal acceptance of the fact that women are going to lift heavy at CrossFit. And those who do that on a daily basis are going to look a certain way. It seems to be a like-mindedness that in this community allows the gender norms to start to get rewritten. So if I wouldn't be surprised, not that I'm expecting a huge number of comments on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if a CrossFit enthusiast or a CrossFitter themselves would say, this is not what I'm thinking about when the women are lifting. That's because they're part of a culture that has put that idea kind of on blast and said, we're kind of changing the expectations for women. Both the women themselves and the men accept that as well, right? And the kids then are socialized into that idea. I will say that when I first stumbled upon CrossFit back in the day, I found it on YouTube, the greatest place in the world for finding any kind of community. I could not believe my eyes. I couldn't believe what I was looking at in terms of the female physique. I have never seen anything like that. Even the idea that women are lifting that amount of weight can be hard to digest the first time you come around it. And part of the gendering experience is things like, when we have a reaction to this event, are we in our minds thinking like, is she going to hurt herself? This is too heavy. Is she going to be able to have children after this? I do believe there are people who are asking those questions. There's a lot of people who accuse a lot of the elites of being on steroids to have bodies like that. Personally, I don't think they are doing that based on how they are training. But all of those questions, once it's kind of introduced into mainstream, start to hit much harder and harder. So I think within CrossFit, the gender norms are evolving when it comes especially to women and lifting heavy weights and having bodies that are built by doing that. When you get out into the everyday world, I don't think that is widely accepted or thought about in general. And so a lot more questions happen. Ooh, I lost my connection. All I was saying is in another video, I'll find what these women look like in everyday life, how clothes fit on them regularly. It's shocking how normal they look. Like, they don't look like muscly weightlifting beasts when they're wearing regular clothes. It's fascinating. And yet it makes me wonder how much that's a good thing that we're even thinking about that. So anyway, I just always think it's fun to have a look at how a particular culture, in this case CrossFit, is challenging gender norms and how they're expressing their gender norm while they're doing things that are really traditionally considered to be the world of what we leave for the men to do. So stick around. I'm hoping to have more content around sociology and everyday life. And in the meantime, now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Think about how you look for gender norms and expression in everyday life and how you perform them yourself. You will never be the same.